Hey Indianapolis Motor Speedway fans, Doug Boles here, coming to you from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum for episode 3 of our Behind the Bricks series. You know, if you haven't seen the first couple, you need to check them out. We started out with Donald Davidson right here in this room, talking about his retirement, but also his passion for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and why we're still going to see him around the Speedway going forward. Jimmy McMillan, our Chief Diversity Officer, we spent some time with him talking about what's going on from a Chief Diversity standpoint, what we're doing with our Race for Equality and Change at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And we also had a special edition, doesn't count in the 3, a special edition with Bob Jenkins telling his stories and then reminding folks he needs our thoughts and prayers as he battles brain cancer. Today, episode number 3, we're here in the museum where we love to be, but appropriately, we're here with the new director of the museum, started on January 5th, Joe Hale, a Hoosier, a Hanover grad. He's been out of the state for a while, spent 5 years at Dreamland in Nantucket Island, Massachusetts, running that film and cultural center, but we're glad to have him back in Indiana. Knows the Speedway, knows the history, knows what we care about fans, but more importantly, he knows how he can take the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum to the next level. Joe, thanks for letting us come in every week and do these behind-the-scenes videos here.
It's my pleasure. I'm honored to be interviewed by the head of the 500 and the sartorial head of the 500 too. I had to go home and get a sport coat so I could be in this interview today with you.
Well, it's the tie, really.
Is it?
So it's the tie that's important. But
I left that off,
I'm sorry. The sport coat comes along with it, but you've been here almost 2 months now, January 5th.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what was it like walking into the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum on the morning of January 5th, knowing that not only were you going to be the caretaker and managing the folks here, but really helping try and vision what the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum could look like going forward.
Well, actually, it was a little sad on January 5th because we were closed. It was kind of a dreary, gray day, and it would have been great if this place would have been full of people, but it wasn't. You know, we were struggling with the pandemic like everybody else, trying to figure out a way that we could get open and invite our guests, our members, our fans back to the museum. So it was a little bit challenging early on. We all finally, after a couple of weeks, said, yeah, you know, we think we could safely open this place, which we did. And now it is great. I mean, there aren't throngs in here now, but at least we're getting our members back and we're getting the crowds back. It was interesting, Doug, because when I came back, I had not been in the museum probably for about 5 years, and I didn't notice too many changes. And it's been interesting because we've had a few openings here at the museum, and I think I've conducted about 40 interviews. And I think the thing that I hear more than anything else from a lot of these people is, you know, that the museum hadn't changed too much from the last time I was there. And I think we're at a point now where people expect museums to be interactive and participatory and immersive and fun. And so we're looking now with the staff, our very hardworking small staff, you know, how can we reimagine ourselves really from top to bottom? I mean, the core of this place is always going to be those cars over there, the 500 cars. But how can we use the rest of the museum a little bit more imaginatively? So that's what we're dealing with right now.
You know, you touched on something that I think is really important. Part of what makes the Indianapolis 500 so special is its history, is its tradition, and that history and tradition doesn't change, right? That's always in the history books what's happened, and a lot of these cars obviously represent those years. But in order to engage a younger audience, or even to engage an audience of our age, to get them involved, it is time to move the museum from static displays to a lot more interactivity. You've had a lot of experience with that over the last several years. Talk a little bit about some of the things you've learned that you think might work well here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Well, first of all, it's got to be fun to come here. It's got to be educational, but it's also got to be entertaining at the same time. So we've got to think, how can we make this really entertaining? And again, I get back to the word interactive because, you know, you're so used to going to a museum today where you have experiences. And you're not just walking around reading what I call books on the wall. And so in fact, I've got a meeting tomorrow with a really brilliant guy who has designed museums around the world. He happens to be a friend, so he's not charging us anything. But he did Ferrari World in Abu Dhabi, and he's really done some interesting things. And I just want him to walk through the museum and tell me what this place could be, in his opinion. Because if we want to reimagine it and we want to kind of renovate parts of it too, we're going to need funding to do that. And I've got to have a good story when we bring potential donors in here and show them what this place could be. I mean, it's been rather static. I think our staff does a great job on you know, some of our exhibits that we do here, and we've got a great exhibit which I can't announce yet that's going to be opening in May here about one of the most popular 500 drivers in history. But we do those really well, but how can we make the rest of the museum a little bit more entertaining and fun for people to visit?
So you touched on something that we've been trying to tell folks, but I still don't think folks totally understand. So it is the museum that really tells the story of the Indianapolis 500, everything that's happened before this year. If you want to learn about it, the first place to start is right here in this museum, and people can come in every day, they can pay their admission fee, come in and see that history right here. But what they don't know is it's a separate foundation from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm the president of the Speedway, you're the president here. We work together, but we are separate. So really how this works is through individual donations and larger donations and people helping develop. So that's one of the stories that we maybe haven't done a great job of telling, but maybe talk a little bit about how important it is. And you talked about how important it is to be able to tell those potential donors. Here's the story of how the Speedway Museum is going to continue to tell our story, but also do it in a different way. Talk a bit about how important it is to begin to get people to understand. It's important that as we have funding and we have passion for this place, it's not just buying tickets, it's investing in the museum.
Yes, and actually I'm looking for a part-time development person if you've got any free time. That was a pretty good pitch for the museum, Doug. But no, we've, as I said, we've got to show people what we aspire to be, what this place could be, in order to get them to invest in this place. And I've spent a lot of my career raising money. I don't mind as long as I am passionate about the vision and the mission of the organization, and I certainly am here. I mean, in a lot of ways, Doug, we work for you. I mean, we are preserving the past, we're recording the present, and occasionally we're giving a glimpse of the future through exhibits that we're doing here. So that partnership is really important to us, and I think it's important for people to realize that we've got to go out and raise our operating budget every single year, and it does come through the memberships, and it comes through special donors that we have and friends of the museum. I mean, it's great that the Penske Group allows us to really be here rent-free, if you will. But we've got to fill this place up with material and exhibits that you guys are proud of, and that are really, as I said, preserving the wonderful stories of the 500, and that's really our mission and our job right now.
So obviously you know a lot about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Indy 500, coming into this job, but I know you've been doing an awful lot of reading as well, just trying to learn more as you go. Any particular stories that you've read over the last couple of months that really intrigued you, or that you found really, really interesting that maybe you didn't know before you took this job?
Well, I was offended when one of my best friends said, "You're going to do what? You don't know a carburetor from spaghetti carbonara." I said, no, I do, sorta. I do know what a carburetor is. But I think I've heard so many people talk so passionately about this place and the role it's played in their lives. And I mean, we've got docents that work here in the museum that have been, coming here for decades and decades. And I can't tell you the number of people that have reached out to me since I took this job 6 weeks ago just to share their stories. My grandfather used to take me to that race, and I've been coming every year for 64 years now. Everybody has that wonderful story about this place. They feel so strongly about their affinity, their connection to this place. So we've got a serious responsibility to preserve those wonderful stories and to illustrate the stories that they want to see. So that's what we're working on now.
So the other thing I don't think people really understand, when you come to a museum, you see the cars here, and you see the docents, and you know how passionate they are, but I don't think they understand the breadth of a staff that it really takes to run an organization like this. So you have staff from PR to business development. You've got a whole group of people that are just worrying about restoring cars. Talk a little bit about the different segments of activity and employees that it really takes to run this place day to day.
Well, unless anybody thinks we're fat and happy, we do have a staff of 11. So, okay, now that doesn't include the docents, but I'm talking about full-time professional staff of 11. But you're right. I mean, I spend probably 60% of my time fundraising, and that's just to keep the lights on and keep the exhibits going. And like I said, I don't mind doing that. But we also have some, wonderful people that we just hired a woman who's going to be starting next month. But we've got to improve the guest experience here. When I was interviewing for this job last summer, I thought, well, I'll come here as a secret shopper and nobody will know who I am and I just want to have that experience. Well, so I was out on Nantucket and I called and I said, well, you know, first I went online and I couldn't make a reservation for a tour online. And I thought, well, how am I going to know it's open that day, that the tours are going to be there? So I thought, well, maybe you got to call them. So I called. The bottom line, it took 4 calls to get my itinerary done for that day. And I don't know another museum that you can't make a reservation online. So we've got a really savvy person coming in who's going to try to just streamline that whole experience of coming here and making a reservation online. And then also, the day after you leave, make sure that you get an email from us thanking you for coming here and asking, what could we have done differently to improve the guest experience? So that's going to be, you know, one of the top priorities, to try to improve that guest experience for people that come to visit us. That's important. We do have, you know, as I said, we've got some development, certainly. We spend a fair amount of time in that. But the curation of our collection of cars is a huge, huge operation. And we're lucky to have some really talented people working on that. But I mean, it's making sure all these cars are in running order, many of them too. And we're also loaning cars all the time to exhibitions around the world, not just around the United States, but around the world. We're borrowing too, as we have exhibitions here too. So it's not a large staff, but I'll tell you, it's a really hard-working staff.
So one of the things you talk about, the collection. So we're sitting in and amongst 80 cars, I'm guessing, something that are here on the floor that you can see every day when you come here. One of the neat things about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and I get this question a lot, I'm sure you get it all the time now in your new position, is, man, I hear about this basement. I want to see the basement. And for years and years and years, there was no opportunity to see the basement at all. Just recently, you've opened up a really special opportunity for some folks to see the basement. The collection is over 300 cars, I believe, in total. A lot of those actually still are housed here, you don't get to see. Talk a little bit about how you go through the process of what cars actually get to be on the floor. And then what's that basement tour like? How's that been, and how can folks take advantage of that next time they're coming to the museum?
Sure. Well, first of all, the entire museum is open now, and I just want everybody to realize that. And as you point out, we are a separate 501c3 nonprofit organization. So everything we make goes back into the museum, certainly reinvested here. But the basement tour, actually one of our employees on the floor came up with that idea last year. Said, why don't we open that up, you know? And so we tried it, and it's become one of the more popular things that we do. I mean, you've got to have a reservation. We only allow 6 people at a time to go down there. No cameras are allowed, but there are just treasures down there. There are some of the coolest cars you can imagine. Don't ask me to name them all yet. It's only been six weeks. But I mean, it is so much fun to go down there, and there is a mystique about it, and that's what we're trying to capitalize upon, quite frankly. And so those tours are going to be, they're operating now. Our VIP tours out on the track, that's going to open on April the 1st. So people are going to be able to, once again, kiss the brick and get out there and take the VIP tour. So we're trying to, really develop tours that are going to appeal to anybody from any walk of life. We're developing an audio tour so that you don't always have to read the book on the wall. You can actually just on your smartphone, if you're at number 42 there, get a story about that car. Not that it was manufactured in 1942 and it was in the 543 and it was driven by somebody. It's the story of that car. That's what we want you to learn about, and to really try to get people engaged once they're in here.
One of the neat things about the museum is you house our Hall of Fame. The folks that have competed here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway that are part of it, people that we honor year over year over year, and there's a panel of 150 folks every year who vote on a list of folks to be inducted into the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Hall of Fame every year. Their names are here. You guys do an event in May to really celebrate them. This year we had a great list, but only 2 of those are actually going to get inducted this year, and they're 2 amazing names, and I'll let you tell those names to our fans that will be inducted this year as part of the Hall of Fame.
Well, last year was so disappointing during pandemic. We had, we were ready to induct Janet Guthrie and Dale Earnhardt into the Hall of Fame, and then of course we had to postpone that. So we're hoping that they'll show up this year. But we are planning at this point in time to have that beautiful dinner downtown at the JW Marriott on May 27th, and we're going to be inducting Michael Schumacher, into the Hall of Fame, as well as Paul Page, which, two wonderful, wonderful inductees there.
So if you love the Speedway, you obviously know both those names. Paul Page, I'm sure you have your own Paul Page stories. The voice of the 500 for so long on the radio, also on television. We actually brought him back on the radio in 2014 and 2015. He's still around. He's on the PA occasionally. Nobody more passionate about the 500 than Paul Page, so that's exciting for him, just because of the way he painted the picture of the Indy 500 year over year on the radio. And then when you think about prolific winners at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, you can't get any better than Michael Schumacher, 5-time winner of the U.S. Grand Prix, won the inaugural race, won 4 in a row after that in the middle 2000s. Certainly somebody that is known worldwide for his racing ability. So to have both of them in the Hall of Fame seems pretty appropriate.
Oh. I mean, growing up in Floyd Knobs, Indiana, outside of New Albany, you sat there on Memorial Day and listened to Paul Page. So so much of this is such a real treat for me, because I'm meeting these people that I just knew about, by reputation.
Well, I think that's one of the best parts of my job. I mean, and you're going to find the other part that's great about your job is when you walk through this museum and you run into a customer who wants to tell you a story about how they fell in love with the 500 their first year here. They may be looking at a car. Well, we've been through with Roger Penske, and he stands by the car for the first race he won and gives you a hard time about that. That car should be my car, because that's the car where I
won
the
right price, Roger.
And Roger's a fan like everybody else, so you connect to those cars that first race, and it brings back so many memories. And I know you've already heard it, but you're going to hear it an awful lot more. So you are the caretaker of an awful lot of history for the Speedway, but more importantly, you're the caretaker of an awful lot of memories for those hundreds of thousands of people that come through the gates every year. Makes it a little more powerful when you walk in every day. It's just not about the assets. It's about all those memories that these fans have created around those cars.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thank you for the time, Joe. We're excited to have you. Fans, I hope you can tell. It's an awful lot of passion in Joe Hale. He's a Hoosier. He gets it. He understands it. This museum could not be in better hands as we go forward to see what the next phase of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum looks like. If you get a chance, check out the website. Get out here. It's not just about buying tickets. If you love this place, $10, $20, just give a little donation to the museum. This place is going places, and you want to be along for the ride. Earlier I caught up with rookie at Indianapolis anyway, and in the NTT IndyCar Series, Roman Grosjean. I actually had to ask him how to pronounce his name because I'm a Hoosier, and I was saying Romain. He'll tell you exactly how to say it in this interview I had just a little while ago with the rookie in the NTT IndyCar Series.
First thing I want to do as Hoosiers, we tend to mispronounce folks' names. So is it Romain, Roman? Is there a roll of the tongue that we can't do as Hoosiers? How should we be pronouncing your names so we do it correctly?
I think that's a challenge. That's a challenge, physical in the car for me is a challenge. And for you pronouncing my name right will be your challenge. It's Roman Grosjean.
Yes, that's going to definitely be a challenge for us. But at least we know. So that's helpful because it gives us at least the short A instead of the long A, and that'll help us as we go forward. So thanks for that. But thanks for joining us. I want to get started with yesterday. You got a chance to strap an IndyCar on your back and do a little testing at Barber. Talk a little bit about your first impressions of the IndyCar and was it fun? What's the learning opportunity there for you? You've slept now, so any thoughts on how yesterday went?
Yeah, it was fun. It was great fun. Obviously, it was important for me to jump back in a racing car after the accident in Bahrain and to know how I felt. And straight away, I felt really good. So I was happy with that part. And then we went into the testing part, discovering the car, trying to understand it. We made a fair bit of changes in the afternoon to go faster and faster. And yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. It's a very tough field, very, very competitive championship. One thing I realized is that it's not a myth that everyone talks about the heavy steering wheel. It is very, very heavy. And, I think when we finish the interview, go back in the gym and work on those arms.
But there's something to be said for that heavy steering wheel, right? No power steering. That does give you as a driver a different feel in the car, right? So do you feel like you're more in control of a car like that versus a car that might have a little bit lighter steering?
I think, it's obviously you feel more what the track is doing to the car, which is great. But when you get to a high-speed corner, sometimes you wish you would have the power steering wheel so you can correct slightly your line. Once you have decided your line with the IndyCar, that's what you're going to get. And obviously, that's learning the track and the car, the behavior. That's a bit of a challenge at the beginning. But as you say, after one night sleeping on it, I'm sure we'll be already in a better place today.
So there is a little bit of mindset change, right? You've spent almost 10 years running in Formula One and that type of car, and then to move over to this one. So I assume at least initially there's a little bit of a transition where you have to get your mind to think completely differently about things like that. That once you decide your line, you can't change it. So is that a process that came quickly yesterday, or is that something that's going to come over the next few tests by the time you get to the beginning of the season?
Well, if I'm being honest, it did remind me my GP2 days back in 2008. In that aspect, I knew that feeling. I need to get used to it a little bit more. I think, yesterday we made a lot of changes. We never really find a sweet spot for the car, but we didn't really looked after it that much neither. We were just here to test and understand and make big changes and see how it reacts. We do have some testing before race one, but there isn't that many days of testing. And I believe in IndyCar, there's a lot you can play with in the car. And obviously that's why I need to learn and understand what everything does. So when we get to Barber mid-April, if the car behaves in a certain way, I can tell the guys, well, I think, we should do that, because when we did it last time, it worked.
So before you got in the car yesterday, had you been in the simulator at all, or was yesterday really your first opportunity to see what the car was like?
Well, I've been in my simulator back home. I launched an esports team last year and got myself a nice simulator at home. And on iRacing, you have the IndyCar and you have some of the tracks, including Barber. So I spent a fair bit of time in there practicing, and it went okay. And yesterday, obviously, was the big day. But I'm gonna try the proper simulator very soon, and therefore have a good idea of what it does and how it feels.
So how much do you learn from an iRacing simulator that you could transfer over? Is it just more getting an idea of where the corners are in the flow and rough braking points? Is there much that you can transfer directly to yesterday?
Yeah, sort of. I think first of all, we get an idea of how the track is, and then the lap time you do on iRacing are actually not that far from what you do real life. So it's actually working very well, and just getting the lines and understanding what you can do and not do. And then obviously the car, it's always going to react a little bit differently. But generally, I think that that's been a good help for me.
So obviously, you spent a lot of time in Formula One. You've been with 3 teams over there. You've had some successes there. Difficult year to end things last year. When did you first start thinking that IndyCar might be a place that you'd end up at some point in your career?
I think last year, really. Just because, when you're racing 21 weekends per year, you don't really have the time to look at everything. And for me, IndyCar was mainly ovals. And not that I didn't want to win Indy 500, which is one of the biggest races in the world, definitively. But ovals was not like something that attracted me. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and as long as you haven't tried, you can't tell. But I don't know, that idea that IndyCar was mainly ovals and then a couple of other circuits. And then last year I looked at the calendar and it was the opposite. And I thought, okay, I think this could be something for me. And I really felt like the challenge would be a tough one, but I like a tough challenge, and that's why I decided to join.
Well, we're looking forward to having you, and I'm looking forward to having you here in May. You're obviously going to run on the road course here in May, and then again in August. But I'm hoping that as we're standing watching the 105th running of the Indianapolis 500, that you get that bug and definitely want to come back and try it for the 106th running next May. Because I think you're going to find. I think you're going to find in May when you're here that you're going to see that race and say, I absolutely want to try. One of the cool things about the NTT IndyCar series, and you touched on a little bit, is just how many different courses there are. And frankly, how many of them are street and road circuits. So next up for you is you get a chance to go to Laguna. Have you had a chance to be there ever in anything before? Have you tested on it? It's a historic U.S. track that I think you're going to find that you're going to find you really enjoy.
No, exactly. I mean, it's one of those tracks that I was playing when I was a kid in video games, and I always loved Laguna Seca. And again, it's on iRacing, so I've made some laps as well there, practicing. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to to go there. You know, the US is such a great country, so big. I mean, I'm getting used to it when I say I'm gonna just fly here to discover a little bit the city, that it's 3 hours flight, and I'm like, oh, really? Is that big? And then we go to California, which is a complete different climate from what you have at the minute, guys. I was lucky to visit the museum at Indianapolis last week, and then I got a lap on track, and it was all snowy. And then you think that you can go to California and go on the beach. It's quite fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing you'll enjoy, and the simulator doesn't quite give it credit or even see it on TV, just the elevation change at Laguna. I think from a driver's standpoint, it's going to be a blast coming up the hill and then back down in the corkscrew. I think that'll quickly become one of your favorite tracks, and we're excited that you're going to participate in that. Have you had an opportunity to do any sim racing on the road course here at the Speedway?
Actually, no. Surprisingly, I'll tell you why. Because on iRacing, you've got different license. You've got the road course, the dirt track, the ovals, and I'm a rookie at ovals, so I'm not allowed to come and enjoy the big races. So I need to get back on it and practice and get into the mix.
Well, and I think you'll find it to be fun. Even the road course, I think you'll enjoy the road course. So you've obviously run COTA. So COTA and our road course here are the only two FIA Grade 1 road courses in the U.S. And it's 48 feet wide, smooth, good curbing. I think you're going to find that it flows really, really well. And you get an opportunity to run down the front stretch of the oval. You're just going the opposite direction of the direction that they go for the Indy 500. But I think you're definitely going to look forward to that. So when you're not racing cars, what do you do as what are some of your hobbies? What do you enjoy doing that's not race related?
Well, many things. But back home I love cycling. I'm a huge cycling fan, and when I came to the US, I looked at where you can kite surf. So I love kite surfing. So when I'm basing myself in the US, it's got to be somewhere where there's wind and beach, so I can go riding. I love cooking. I made a cookbook with my wife a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, and spending time with my kids and playing with them.
So, how many kids do you have, and how old?
I've got 3 kids, 2 boys, which are 7 and 5 years old, and my last one, she's my daughter, and she's 3.
Any racing interest in their future yet, or are they just having fun just watching dad?
They love watching. I don't know if they want to do it. They haven't asked for it yet. I won't push them. If they want to try, they will have a chance to do, as I did with my parents. But I won't push them in there. They do what they want to do.
So you have an opportunity to work with Dale Coyne and Rick Ware in terms of the team this year. Dale has been relatively successful over the last several years. As one of those cars that's always in the hunt, especially on road circuits. The team is really good. I mean, really starting with Justin Wilson picking up some wins for them, Sebastian driving for them. They've had some really good luck. How have you been gelling so far with Dale and the rest of the team?
It's been a smooth ride. I'm learning everything. I'm working with the engineers, with Dale. Obviously, yesterday was the first big day because now we can start working from what we've seen yesterday and get somewhere from there, which was cool. So really, we've prepared as much as we could, but now that we have one day under our belt, I think we're gonna be able to go to the next step.
When you got over here, any race car drivers that are on the circuit right now that you were acquainted with or friends with, or are you going to be building sort of new relationships with the bulk of the field?
Well, if I'm being honest, I've had a beautiful welcome in IndyCar. Everyone has been super cool, and the drivers. And yesterday, I spent some time talking with Sébastien Bourdais and Takuma Sato, and Simon Pagenaud was really helpful on the phone, as well as Marcus Ericsson. I've been exchanging a fair bit of messages with Jimmy Johnson's, which it's cool fun to know that we both are rookie. So really exciting.
Yeah, that one of the things I think you'll find is you're going to get a bunch of folks that are going to want you to succeed, and I think you're going to find that people will be helpful in terms of getting you up to speed quickly. And it is funny that you and Jimmy both are rookies, but at the end of the day, you certainly aren't rookies in your racing career, and we're really excited to have you. So as you start thinking about the U.S., obviously through the bulk of the season, I assume you'll be based over here. Haven't quite figured out where that location is going to be yet.
No, I think, I would be traveling a fair bit back to Europe because that's where my kids are at school, and then they're middle of the year, so it'd be tricky to remove them. I think in the summer, when they are on holidays, we will definitely spend some time in the US. But as I say, it's such a huge country, so much to discover that I'm not sure we're going to base ourselves anywhere, but just maybe go and see, explore different places. But yeah, when I come on my own, I've got a few days. I tend to go to Miami. It's just good weather, and as I say, there's a beach, the sea, and some wind, so I can kite surf.
Yeah. So one of the places, it's funny. So I'm not a kite surfer, but I'm a wakeboarder. So obviously big board with no kite. So a few years ago, just south of the St. Pete racetrack is a huge bridge called the Sunshine Skyway. And it's really a cool trip just to go over it because it's so big. On the south side of the Sunshine Skyway, there's a park area, and there's an area where the water is relatively shallow, and it's full of kiteboarders. And it's crazy. The people, they put their tents up and then they're out kiteboarding. So when you're down in St. Pete, it's 15 minutes south of the racetrack, 20 minutes south of the racetrack. Tons and tons of kiteboarding takes place down there. Talk a little bit about, so for people that don't know what kiteboarding is, what is kiteboarding, and when you're out doing it, what's the sensation like of lifting off the water and then landing back on the water? And do you do any tricks?
Yeah, I mean, I'm learning. I can do a few tricks: back roll, front roll, grabs, stuff like that. But basically, kite surf is using a big kite to drag you on a wakeboard if you want, and then you can use you don't even need a wave to jump. You can just use the strength of the kite and then jump very high. I mean, the world record is about, oh yeah, wow, we're not talking meters, sorry, but 34 meters, which is a 10-floor building. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And that's huge. Those guys they're absolutely great, and I've had the chance to meet some pros and get some tips, and I know that, yeah, I've heard that St. Pete is a really good place for kite surfing. So I may, if we get the chance to come in India and test on the 22nd of March, then I'm gonna go, I think, down to St. Pete and see what I can do there.
So do you wakeboard or wake surf or anything behind a boat, or are you strictly a kiteboarder?
No, back home in Geneva, I wake surf. I used to wakeboard, but after a couple of face plants, I've stopped. So wake surf is safer. Yeah,
those edges can be pretty brutal when you catch them. You're in the water before you know it, and your eyelids are peeled back on the backside of your head for sure. That's fantastic. So cooking, any particular kind of food you like to cook? And then is there anything, race day? Do you have a particular meal or anything that you do race day? Or are you pretty flexible on what you eat prior to races?
I think cooking, I like to cook pretty much everything. French food is my favorite. But I was born with it, and I don't think it's too bad. But I also love Thai and Japanese and Italian and a good barbecue here and there. So I pretty much eat everything. On race day, last year I worked with a nutritionist a little bit on how we can make sure that we get the best nutrition before race day. We have to think that those days are very intense in terms of obviously physical effort as well as mental resource, heat in the car, and so on. So it's been good, and I've made a very simple menu that I can repeat everywhere.
What's a successful 2021 look like to you?
I think get Daily Coin as much as we can in the front, fight in the top 5 as much as we can. Obviously, podiums would be great. Wins would be unbelievable. Well, not unbelievable, but fantastic. So we're gonna work. But as I say, yesterday I got my first taste, and I could tell that it was super competitive and super fast, and that I had to probably adapt a bit my driving style to understand how things would work. So that's what I'm gonna figure out. It was just before we got on the Zoom, I was working on data, trying to analyze things. So I really want to make it a good year, and for that I just need to work as much as I can.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time, spending time with us. I know our fans are looking forward to having you here. I know the drivers are looking forward to having you here. I've heard from a lot of folks that are just really excited you're going to be here. You're going to help increase the competition level and certainly hopefully we'll have a lot of your fans who followed you your career in F1 who are going to continue to follow you here in the NTT IndyCar Series. And if there's ever anything we can do for you at Indianapolis next time you're in, any kind of tour you need, we'll take care of you. But thanks so much.
Right.
I look forward to continuing to keep some dialogue open, and good luck with the rest of testing and certainly at Barber when the season kicks off.
Thank you.
There you have it, Indianapolis Motor Speedway fans. Roman Grosjean. I was impressed that he was not offended when I asked him which way to pronounce his name so that we get it correctly for the rest of the year. So thank you, Roman, for being there. You know, Dave First has really been trying to keep up with the NTT IndyCar Series over the last couple of weeks. Tons of testing going on, a lot of great news that he's going to fill us in on a moment, and also a sneak peek at some of the interviews that he's been doing that eventually will be content over the next month or so that you're going to see on some of our favorite drivers who competed at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and in the NTT IndyCar Series.
Another round of testing at Barber Motorsports Park with Dale Coyne Racing getting its first taste of 2021. And this season, that means NTT IndyCar Series rookie Roman Grosjean, the 34-year-old from France, getting his first track time in the series, joining teammate Ed Jones and 10 others on the 17-turn, 2.3-mile layout. His biggest takeaway, aside from how impressed the former Formula One driver was with his IndyCar, is how welcoming the paddock is.
When I came yesterday, I was quite surprised to see that the cars are being set up, you know, here, and there's no closed garage or tents or so on. I think I really like it. You know, you get to go in the pit lane, and then I was talking to Sebastian Bourdais. Obviously, Takuma came over, and we had a good chat, and next to his car, and you know, it's spec cars, so you don't have anything to hide in a way. And I think that's really good fun.
Meanwhile, there are other ways to prepare for the upcoming season. A series of car unveilings wrapped up the month of February with NTT IndyCar Series rookie Jimmy Johnson unveiling the look for his Carvana Honda for Chip Ganassi Racing. Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing unveiled the look of Takuma Sato's car for 5 races this season, welcoming Brand Shield health protection products. And Arrow McLaren SP showing off its look for 2021, the colorful Views Chevrolet for Felix Rosenquist and the Arrow Chevrolet for Pato Award, both primed and polished for the new season. And in a virtual news conference, both drivers are clearly ready as well.
I have lots of faith in this Arrow McLaren SP group. The engineers have been, working tirelessly the whole off season to try and find those little extra tenths or milliseconds that we might need either in qualifying, in race pace, or honestly anything helps because it's just so competitive. And I think every year everyone gets better.
I think we have a lot of potential in the team here. There's a lot of clever people that works every day to really understand where we can find the last couple of details to get up there, as Pato said, to start winning races and to really prove ourselves where we can be. But yeah, it's awesome.
And hope you'll log on to IndyCar.com as we celebrate Women's History Month with a series of Where Are They Now interviews, beginning with the first woman to qualify for the Indianapolis 500, the legendary Janet Guthrie.
Sometimes I feel like a cat with tin cans tied to its tail. I'll never get beyond being the first woman to earn a starting spot in the Indianapolis 500 and also in the Daytona 500. But I would just like to be remembered as a damn good racing driver, is what I would like my legacy to be.
It's a busy month for the NTT IndyCar Series as the countdown to the April 18th season opener at Barber Motorsports Park continues.
Well, thanks, Dave. There's an awful lot of exciting stuff going on around the NTT IndyCar Series. I can't wait for April when things get kicked off. Certainly can't wait for May and when we're all back here for the Indianapolis 500 and the GMR Grand Prix to kick the month of May off. Thanks to Roman Grosjean for joining us today. Thanks for time with Joe Hale. If you get a chance, I know it's not May yet, but the museum's open. Come visit the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. Let me know you're here. I'd love to come over and say hello. We'll see you next time on Behind the Bricks.